Hi CC2. Today's topic is solving equations and using equations instead of the 5D process. So the essential question today is, how do you solve equations without using the 5D process? So before we begin, we need to talk about one-step equations. So we've already gone over one-step equations. We've actually already gone over solving equations instead of the 5D process in chapter 6, but we are going to continue that conversation today. So the first type of one-step equation, we're going to go over addition. So let's say we have x plus 4 is equal to 18. Remember, in order to solve these problems, we always use the inverse operations to solve. So if this is an addition problem, in order to use the inverse operation, we are going to subtract 4 from both sides in order to make a zero pair. So then you're only left with x on the left side is equal to 18 minus 4, which is 14. That's one example. Now let's say we have subtraction, and we're going to say we have 10 is equal to x minus 3. And in this example, since it's subtraction, the inverse operation of subtraction is addition. So in order to get x alone, I'm going to add 3 to both sides, because remember, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. You create a zero pair. You're left with x on the right side. 10 plus 3 is equal to 13. The next type of one-step equation is multiplication. So let's say we have the problem 3x is equal to negative 15. For 3x equals negative 15, in order to get x alone, we want to take the inverse operation, which if this is multiplication, then we need to divide by 3 on both sides. So this creates a giant 1. So then I'm left with just x equals negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. One last example, we're going to pretend that we have 7 is equal to x divided by 9. Remember, our inverse operation of division is multiplication, so I'm going to multiply by 9 on both sides. So these 9's cancel out, and you're left with just x equals 9 times 7 is 63. So this is just a review of the one-step equations. Now we're going to go over distributive property. So remember, distributive property is when you take the outside number and you multiply by everything on the inside. And what I mean by this is, let's say for instance we have the problem 4 times the quantity of 2x plus 6, and that's equal to 64. So 4 is the number outside of our quantity, so you're going to multiply 4 by everything on the inside. So then 4 times 2x is 8x, and then 4 times 6 is 24. Just drop down your plus sign, is equal to 64. You just write everything else. So now we want to get x alone, and in order to do that, we need to first get rid of this addition symbol, and we got to get rid of the adding 24 first, because we got to get rid of the things that are further away from x, and then we can deal with the 8. So in order to get rid of this, I'm going to take away, use the inverse operation, subtract 24 on both sides, and then this makes a zero pair. So then on the left side, I'm just left with 8x equals 64 minus 24 is 40. And then my next step would be to take the inverse of this multiplication problem, which is division. So I'm going to divide on both sides. I'm going to divide by 8. So then now I have a giant 1. And I'm left with x on the left side is equal to 5. So this part was just a review. Now we're going to move into word problems. But first, let's break a couple of things down. So, we have a couple of different words that you usually see in different word problems. So, we're going to talk about the different words to expressions. So, let's say, for instance, a word problem has the word twice as much, or just the word twice in general. Remember, if it's something twice, then it's 2 times is 2x. That's twice as much. Or if you had 3 times as much, 3 times, that's 3x. Those are different examples. Remember, you can use any variable. X is just the variable that we tend to use the most often. Then you'll see words like a number, more than. You'll see something, a number more than, which if you see more than, then that usually implies that you're going to be adding. So you're going to take x and add by that number. And then sometimes you'll see in a problem an amount or a number less than. And if you see the problem is less than, then you are going to do x minus that number. Oftentimes, you'll see these two different things combined. So then sometimes they'll say, for instance, so for example, you'll have 8 less than twice a number. And in this instance, you will have 8 less than, so you know you're going to be subtracting 8. But then it says twice a number. So twice a number, remember, is 2x. So we need to make sure we do 2x minus 8. So there are several different types of problems that you'll see like this. These are just a couple examples that you'll see on the following page. Now let's try one large word problem and figure out how do we solve this without using the 5D process. So the word problem we have is Jasmine drove twice as far as Erica. And then Michelle drove 10 miles more than Erica. And altogether, they drove 90 miles. The question is going to be asking you to, 90 miles, find the number of miles driven by each person. Sorry that this is a long problem for you to write, but you can pause the video at any time in order to write it. So, we need to break this down into the 3 different people. So this story is about Jasmine, Erica, and Michelle. So the first step that I usually do to break down a problem is I just write down the people. I'm talking about Jasmine, I'm talking about Michelle, and I'm also talking about Erica. So if I know these are the 3 different people that I'm discussing, I want to write down the information that I know about each. So far it says Jasmine drove twice as far as Erica. So if it's twice as far, remember I said up here, if it's twice as far as 2x. So twice as far, 2x. And then it says Michelle drove 10 miles more than, which we talked about, the number more than is x plus whatever that number is, and it was 10, so x plus 10. And then we look for Erica. They don't give us any information about Erica. We only know what Jasmine and Michelle drove. So then you can assume that Erica is X because she's the unknown. We don't know anything about Erica. So now that we have those three different people, the last piece of information is all together they drove 90 miles. So that means if you add up these three different lengths, you should get to 90. So that means if I add 2x plus x plus 10 plus this final x, all of that should equal up to 90 miles. So then now that I know that this is 90 miles, I'm going to solve the equation. This is just like any other equation. My like terms, I have 2x, x, and x. They can all combine to get you to 4x. Plus, all I'm left with is 10 equal to 90. Remember, our first step is to always combine like terms if you see fit. So then, now I want to get rid of the furthest thing away from x. So that's plus 10. So I'm going to use the inverse operation, which is minus 10 on both sides. So then this makes a zero pair. I'm left with 4x equals 80. So then, next step, I'm going to use the inverse of multiplication. I'm going to divide by 4x on both sides, creating a giant 1. I'm left with x equals 20 miles. Remember, always look back to the question. It says find the number of miles driven by each person. So, if I knew x is 20 miles, that means I know Erica is the one that drove 20 miles. But that doesn't tell me exactly how many miles Michelle and Jasmine drove, so I still have to figure it out. So Jasmine was 2 times x, so it should be 2 times 20 miles, because I'm just going to input those miles, or input 20 in for x. 2 times 20 is 40 miles. And then Michelle drove 10 more miles than Erica, so I'm going to do 20 plus 10 is equal to 30 miles. Altogether, 40 miles plus 30 miles plus 20 miles equals to 90 miles. That is how you solve this equation. Now, the idea is that on your Chapter 7 test, we do not want to use the 5D process anymore. I noticed that some people are doing it in Chapter 6. We are done with it. We need to see you solving equations. If you would like some extra practice, please raise your hand. You will be doing these multi-step equations maze. You're going to start at the top, and then once you solve for x, you can go either here or there depending on your answer, and then keep following until you get to the finish line. Once you finish your multi-step maze, then there are 3 problems on the back, 2 problems which you have to do. If you finish them, you have an extra challenge. Please begin when you're done with this video.